Who is Tamara Green in Reacher Season 4? Sydelle Noel explained, warning, spoiler warning. This video contains spoilers for Reacher Season 4, including Tamara Green's role in Reacher's investigation and her relationship with Jack Reacher. Reacher Season 4 introduces a completely new group of characters, but one of the most important is Tamara Green, played by Sydelle Noel. She's a Philadelphia police detective who becomes involved in the investigation after a shocking incident on a subway pulls Jack Reacher into a much larger conspiracy. But Tamara isn't simply another police officer in the background. She quickly becomes one of the people closest to Reacher during the investigation, and her partnership with him gives Season 4 a very different dynamic from the previous seasons. So who exactly is Tamara Green? What role does she play in Reacher's investigation? How is she connected to the original Gone Tomorrow novel? And could she become Reacher's next major romantic relationship? Let's break it down. 1. Who is Tamara Green? Tamara Green is a Philadelphia police detective played by Sydelle Noel. She is one of the major new characters introduced in Season 4. Unlike Reacher, Tamara is a career law enforcement officer working within an established police department. That immediately creates an interesting contrast. Reacher is a former military police officer who operates independently. Tamara has procedures, colleagues, evidence requirements, and a department to answer to. But despite those differences, both characters have something important in common. They don't easily accept explanations that don't make sense. And that's exactly why Tamara becomes involved with Reacher. Season 4's story begins when Reacher encounters Anna Merrick on a subway. Her death quickly becomes much more complicated than it first appears, and Tamara is one of the detectives investigating what happened. 2. What happens to Tamara's investigation? At first, Tamara is simply doing her job. She needs to understand what happened to Anna. Reacher, however, immediately sees things differently. He was one of the last people to speak with Anna, so he becomes an important witness. But Reacher isn't satisfied with simply answering police questions. He starts asking questions of his own. Why was Anna carrying what she had? Why did she behave the way she did? And why does her death appear to attract the attention of people who clearly have something to hide? Tamara realizes that Reacher may know things that aren't immediately obvious from the official investigation. That creates the foundation for their partnership. 3. Is Tamara Green Reacher's ally? Yes. Tamara becomes one of the important people helping Reacher investigate the mystery. But she isn't simply there to follow Reacher around. She has her own authority and her own investigative instincts. That's important because Reacher doesn't need another character who simply agrees with him. He works much better with people who can challenge him. Tamara can question Reacher's assumptions while still recognizing that his instincts are often correct. That creates a more balanced partnership. Reacher brings his experience, physical ability, and unconventional methods. Tamara brings police knowledge, investigative experience, and access to information Reacher wouldn't necessarily have on his own. Together, they become much more effective. 4. Who plays Tamara Green? Tamara Green is played by Sydelle Noel. Noel is known for roles including Glow and Arrow, and she joins Reacher Season 4 as one of the season's key new cast members. Her casting is particularly interesting because she was actually considered for another major Reacher role before eventually joining the show as Tamara. Noel revealed that she had previously auditioned for the role of Frances Neagley before eventually being cast as Tamara Green. That makes her arrival in the Reacher universe especially interesting for longtime viewers. She's not simply another new face. She was almost part of the franchise in a completely different role. 5. Is Tamara based on a book character? Yes, but with an important change. Season 4 is based on Lee Child's 2009 novel Gone Tomorrow. In the book, Reacher works with an NYPD detective named Theresa Lee. For the television adaptation, the character has been reimagined as Tamara Green.
The change isn't unusual for the series. The television adaptation regularly changes locations, supporting characters, and elements of the original novels to create a story that works for television. So fans of Gone Tomorrow may recognize the basic role Tamara plays, even though the character isn't a direct one-to-one adaptation of Theresa Lee. 6. Is Tamara Reacher's love interest? This is one of the biggest reasons fans are interested in her. Tamara isn't simply Reacher's police contact. Her character is also positioned as a potential romantic interest for Reacher. That connection was reported during production, with Tamara's character being described as the television adaptation's version of Theresa Lee, Reacher's romantic connection in Gone Tomorrow. But the relationship works differently from a typical television romance. Reacher isn't someone who easily settles down. He travels constantly. He doesn't like being tied to one place, and his lifestyle makes long-term relationships extremely difficult. Tamara, meanwhile, has a career, a home, and responsibilities within Philadelphia law enforcement. So even if there is chemistry between them, there is an obvious question. Can someone like Reacher actually have a normal relationship? That's part of what makes their dynamic interesting. 7. Why does Tamara work well with Reacher? The best Reacher partnerships usually work because the other character isn't simply a sidekick. Tamara fits that pattern. She can operate within the law while Reacher operates around it. She has access to police resources. Reacher has connections and instincts that don't necessarily fit standard police procedure. And when their approaches collide, the story gets more interesting. Tamara also provides something Reacher often lacks: someone who understands the local environment. Reacher is constantly moving from one place to another. Tamara knows Philadelphia. She understands the police department. She knows how investigations are supposed to work. That gives Reacher an advantage he wouldn't have if he were investigating everything alone.
8. Tamara and Sean Daugherty. Tamara also works with Detective Sean Daugherty, played by Kevin Corrigan. Daugherty is another member of the Philadelphia police investigation and provides an additional perspective on Reacher. This creates an interesting triangle. Tamara is willing to take Reacher seriously. Daugherty represents another law enforcement perspective. And Reacher, as usual, operates according to his own rules. The three don't necessarily approach the case in exactly the same way. That difference helps the investigation develop. Tamara doesn't have to become Reacher's unquestioning partner. Instead, she can remain a detective with her own priorities. 9. Why is Tamara important to the Season 4 mystery? Tamara's importance comes from the fact that she is connected to the investigation from the beginning. Anna Merrick's death doesn't look like a straightforward case. Reacher suspects there is something much bigger behind it. Soon, the investigation expands into government secrets, political connections, missing information, and dangerous people trying to recover a mysterious flash drive. Tamara therefore finds herself investigating something much bigger than a single death, and that puts her directly in Reacher's path. The more Reacher discovers, the more dangerous the case becomes. Tamara isn't just investigating a crime anymore. She's becoming involved in a conspiracy. 10. What makes Tamara different from previous female characters? One of the interesting things about Reacher is that each season gives Reacher a different type of partner. Season 1 had Roscoe Conklin. Season 2 brought back Reacher's former military colleagues. Season 3 introduced Susan Duffy. Season 4 gives him Tamara. But Tamara is particularly interesting because she combines two roles. She's an investigative partner and potentially a romantic interest. That means the audience gets to see two sides of Reacher. There's the Reacher who investigates a mystery, and there's the Reacher who has to deal with personal connections. That's unusual for a character who usually prefers to keep everyone at a distance. 11. Could Tamara stay in Reacher's life? That's the big question. Reacher's biggest problem with relationships isn't necessarily finding someone he likes, it's staying. His entire lifestyle is built around leaving. Once a case is finished, Reacher normally moves on. That's why even when he develops a connection with someone, the relationship can be temporary. Tamara has a life in Philadelphia. She has her career. She has responsibilities. Reacher has none of those things tying him down. So even if they develop genuine feelings for each other, there is an obvious obstacle:
Reacher doesn't stay, and that could make their relationship very different from a conventional romance. Final thoughts. So, who is Tamara Green in Reacher Season 4? Tamara is a Philadelphia police detective played by Sydelle Noel, and she becomes one of the most important new characters in Reacher's latest investigation. She becomes involved after Anna Merrick's death and gradually finds herself investigating something much bigger than an ordinary case. What makes Tamara particularly interesting is that she isn't simply there to help Reacher. She has her own investigative instincts. She has her own authority, and she can challenge Reacher in a way that makes their partnership more interesting.
She's also loosely adapted from Theresa Lee, the NYPD detective Reacher works with in Lee Child's Gone Tomorrow, the novel Season 4 is based on. And then there's the romantic side. Tamara appears to occupy the role of Reacher's potential love interest this season, creating another problem for a man who has spent most of his life avoiding attachments. Because Reacher can solve a murder, he can fight trained killers, he can uncover government conspiracies. But staying in one place and building a normal relationship, that might be much harder for him. And that's what makes Tamara Green such an interesting addition to Season 4. She isn't simply another person caught in Reacher's latest case. She's someone who can potentially challenge him professionally, personally, and emotionally. And as the Season 4 mystery gets deeper, the question isn't just whether Tamara can help Reacher solve the case. It's whether Reacher will allow someone like Tamara to become part of his life. Or, as always, he'll walk away when the case is over.